Welcome to the new Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's new Cyber Frontier.
Welcome everyone to a new edition of the new Cyber Frontier. I have with me today a very special guest, Dr. Subhash Paluru. He's coming to us from Sacramento, California. He is the CEO of Freedom Motors, a company started around 1997 time frame. A very unique industry focusing on renewable energy and various types of motorcraft. Dr. Paluru, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today.
Great. Well, you know, it's great having somebody with your diverse background. You have a PhD in physics. You know, in the contribution to the show today is going to be focused on some technology that we're really not used to seeing. Renewable energy, focused on the mechanics and the engineering of motors. Can you give us a little bit of a background on your company and what it is that you do?
Absolutely. So I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Freedom Motors. Joined in 2018, right after I retired as the Senior Executive from the U.S. government. My job is to, of course, as the CEO, is primarily to focus on taking Freedom Motors from being an R&D company, a research and development company, to a mass manufacturing and a positive cash flow company. So that's my agenda and my job. Most importantly, what Freedom Motors does is Freedom Motors has a range of engines that we have developed. They are basically rotary engines, and everybody would say, why would you need engines in this day and age when there are plenty of EVs? So let me give you an example. EVs have something we call range anxiety. You know, so people cannot drive farther enough. You need a very good power infrastructure to charge the vehicles on the highway. I mean, not just US, but the entire world, because we are not the only ones who are going to change the world. It's the entire world. We need everyone to do it. So how do you fix that problem? Well, either you need charging stations or you need a mechanism that can be on board a car that could charge a car, you know, while it's driving, so you can extend the range of the vehicle. But now comes in what kind of charges you want to put in. I mean, are they renewable? And what is the carbon footprint of that, and all those things. So we had the vision to develop these engines that run on methanol or ethanol, specifically renewable methanol, where we are carbon neutral. So we don't produce any carbon when we burn that, and our engines, the future, the next generation ones, so we call it compound. Those engines, you can't even hear them. I mean, it's just basic humming noise, and they can sit in the back of the car, 1 cubic feet, and it can produce enough juice to charge your batteries in the car, hence extending the range of your car infinitely. You know? So that's the theory, right? So what you're doing is you're taking care of Mother Nature, but you're also helping the industry to fuel the EVs for the future generation. So that's the key. That's the thought that we have. And we also have like aviation. Well, the drones, the only reason why we can't fly taxis today is because of the limitation of the batteries. So how do you fix that problem? Well, our aviation principles and our models that we have today, that we flew almost 200 times, we don't need batteries. We use our engines, 8 of them, in a specific order, and we can fly it. You know, like for 2 hours at 75 miles an hour. You know, 2 hours is basically good enough for an air taxi within, let's say, California. You know. So we have done those technologies. We have advanced those technologies in that aspect. So overall, our focus is renewable energy, using the technology to help mitigate carbon footprint, and also enhance, the other technologies, make them work better.
That's awesome. So, you were talking about technology being able to be less of a carbon footprint. Of course, that's been a focus for decades now, at least in theory. Actionable technology. You guys, your organization has over 49 you have 49 patents, 15 intellectual property. Concentrations, within your organization. And so those focus on those things that kind of make the world a better place while providing new technology and new capabilities. Let's go back and talk about your organization. So, you spent a lot of time with Department of Energy. You retired as an SES. Is that what I heard?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That is correct.
So, we're talking about a high-level government leader within the Department of Energy. So, you've probably seen a lot of things throughout your career from the U.S. government side that helps contribute to your success in your current position as CEO for Freedom Motors. Tell us a little bit about your background. Right after this, we're going to take a short break, but I'd like to come back and have you talk a little bit about your background. Where did you come from, and how did you get introduced to where you're at today? And so we're going to be right back with Dr. Subhash Paluru from Freedom Motors.
Cyber Resilience Institute helps build strong cyber communities designed to prevent members from attack. Like building a neighborhood watch, it takes coordination and a sharing community to protect our identities and valuables in the virtual world. Typically, we hear that organizations know they need to do something to protect their cyber assets, but don't know where to begin. Let Cyber Resilience Institute help your community create an action plan. Cyber Resilience Institute will build your community or business marketplace so that it is designed to support a collective cyber defense. Contact them for more information at cyberresilienceinstitute.org.
Welcome back to the new Cyber Frontier. My name is Shawn Murray. We're talking to Dr. Paluru from Freedom Motors out in Sacramento, California. Just gave us a great overview of some of the accomplishments that they've made since 1997 in the renewable energy motor space. What I'd like to do is kind of focus a little bit on who you are. Where did you come from? What's your background?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in India. Ended up doing my PhD in India, and then came here to venture into postdoctoral research. And in 1999, I published my paper in IEEE Transactions and Superconductors with a professor at Arizona State University, Patrick Phelan. So after that, it was time to go get a real job. Because I was married and my wife was pregnant, and so on and so forth. Those things that we can't ignore, right, in life. So I went ahead, and I had this tremendous idea at that time to see what we can do to help mitigate the deregulation of the energy industry. And I read a lot of books, which comes naturally for somebody who has written theses and PhD and published, right? So I went ahead with the idea of creating a software, so to speak, that can trade energy online. One of its kind in the United States, and one of our close friends of ours, he liked the idea, so he put the money in, and voila, we had a startup. We carefully planned it, and the company grew so big that the U.S. government got attracted to that software, and the D.o.E. invited us to do everything for them in the energy trading side and controlling the grid side of the software. We call it SCADA. And then once we got in, for a few years working on the contract side, the government said, Subhash, you're very valuable to us. Why don't you become a U.S. government employee? and they offered to recognize my contract time in the government as federal time, which is extremely important. So I accepted because I wanted to do something for this country, which has given me so much for coming here, taking care of me. So I started my career there in actually the SCADA systems and control systems on the grid side. So basically, the most important focus was controlling the grid. Number two was cybersecurity of that and physical security of that. So that's my forte. And from when I went on to become the CIO, the Regional Information Officer for the entire region in Sacramento, which is basically, we call them the CVPIA, the Central Valley Project, and the Washoe projects, which is like most of California and Nevada. So I became the RIO of the entire enterprise for the U.S. government. We all developed SCADA systems, softwares, and also cybersecurity and physical security of that. And then I was called by D.o.E. They saw my talents, they saw what I did, so they called me, and I did a brief stint as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for D.o.E. I ran the Power Systems Engineering Research and Development at that time, which also had, it's called SETS program, Cybersecurity for Energy Delivery Systems. And I was also a pioneer in the physical security and securing the substations and the physical assets of a power grid. I went on to acquire my top secret SCI clearances in the US government. So I've heard, seen, got briefed on a lot of issues on that. We developed several systems to protect the grid and all that. So most importantly, the base, the foundation of my career in D.o.E. was technology to markets. When I was up in D.o.E., it was attracting good technology that we can fund them. We can provide them grants so that it could be for societal benefits. And then later they become, how they can bring that technology to market. So that was what I did. And then after 2018, after several years of service, I took an early retirement. You resign, and then you defer your retirement at 62. So I was young enough to retire, and old enough to continue to work in the U.S. government. So it was time to venture out in private industry. And then I got a call. People knew in California that I was retired, and I was invited to meet the board of Freedom Motors, and they saw that unique ability of mine to recognize the technology and take that startup to success. So that's what I do now for Freedom Motors, in a nutshell.
That's awesome. What a great background. Department of Energy, one of the oldest departments within our federal government, with our fingers in a lot of sensitive things, from developing energized weapons of different sorts to what you're explaining, power distribution systems. I know we have a large InfraGard, part of the FBI here in Colorado, in our chapter up in Denver. There was a strong focus on the energy sector threats here a few years ago, predominantly because people were stealing copper out of substations in the middle of a farm and stuff. And so it's kind of weird stuff that you may have seen previously as well, right? But
I've seen some photos.
The ones that we were shown, somebody obviously didn't know what they were doing. They actually got into one of these little tiny substations in the middle of a farm, and as they were taking the copper, they had a keychain with lots of keys on it. They all got, he must have not grounded, and they welded all those keys because the evidence was still there, but the person apparently didn't die. But the kind of weird stuff that you see out there.
Absolutely.
But great background, obviously well transitioned into your current role with Freedom Motors, and the contributions that you're going to be making there. During a pandemic, how does Freedom Motors adapt to going back, 49 patents, 15 intellectual property areas, and what is it on site? Talk about the organization from a collaborative perspective. How is it that ideas come to your organization, and how do those ideas come to fruition?
Absolutely. Fantastic question, actually. It is one of the biggest issues for any startup, actually. The most important thing about any startup is the idea itself. The next most important thing is the leadership. Because leadership actually uses that idea and brings it to fruition. So ideas come from to us from two ways, right? One is from science perspective, and the second one is the real world problems. So when we see science and what we can do, and when we see real world issues, we bring them together and try to create a solution for that. So most importantly, all the science part of it is our founder, Dr. Muller, and the ideas, the implementation of that technology, the viability of the technology in the market, because at the end of the day, my job is to put Freedom Motors in positive cash flow. So I have to make sure that technology actually is attractive for the markets, and the cost is, there is a cost benefit analysis that needs to go in there. So that's what we do together. And once we know that this technology is a viable technology, the first and foremost thing is to bring the core executives together to see how we can create a trade secret around it. Because most trade secrets are so vulnerable that you put a product out there and then there goes your trade secret. So you have to manage that. So the first thing that you do is, God created a USPTO, so you have to rely on that. The first thing we do is apply for provisionals to make sure that we have a good coverage on that. And within a year, you go for either utility or a design patent. Very important. That philosophy has given us a lot of traction in our business, what we do. And hence we have 49 U.S. and international patents, and how we protected that. It's very important, because not just out there that you protect, but internally how you protect your data. Protecting data is like limiting that information to the core executives, limiting that information, the next line of information, when we convert that into the real technology, is to our production managers and the engineers, so they can implement that in the device or the widget itself that we build. That's the most important thing. Trade secrets they're the most vulnerable. You have to decide as a leader what can still stay as a trade secret, and what can be converted that into a patent. For example, now we have decided, we signed up with a large investment banker out of Wall Street. So since we did that, now our plan was to take half of them and convert them into patents. There are still some which we continue to keep that as a trade secret. For example, we developed a coating with NASA that goes on top of our engines. But the issue here is everybody knows what kind of coating we do, but nobody knows at what temperature, what's the annealing temperature is, what's the thickness of the coating is, that cannot be patented. You patent that, it doesn't matter. People will still use that. So you have to keep that as a trade secret. So this is how we managed our information within our organization.
Well, that's a great example. The amount of effort that goes into protecting your intellectual property, from the trade secret side to the intellectual property on the patent side, balancing what should be disclosed and what can be disclosed. These are great things to come back after this break and talk about from an information security or a cybersecurity perspective. We are talking to Dr. Paluru from Freedom Motors out of Sacramento, California. We're going to come right back after this break and continue our discussion. Welcome back to the New Cyber Frontier. My name is Shawn Murray. We have Dr. Paluru from Freedom Motors. He's given us a great background on himself, his company, some of the technologies, the contributions to the energy sector. Some of these things are pretty sensitive. They're providing capabilities for United States and international governments, different types of technology, and focusing on renewable energy. So when you have as much intellectual property, trade secrets, as your company does, and you've been around since '97, that's the footprint, right, before the startup, and that's a lot of information that needs to be protected. You talked a little about how you separate a trade secret from a patent, and that information needs to be protected. And you've had a lot of acquisitions over the years of different companies. How do you protect that information? What does the cyber hygiene look like at Freedom Motors?
Absolutely. So with my background, it helps a lot because we protected some real sensitive information in the U.S. government, in D.o.E., and actually I continue to be a part of InfraGard. So those principles have been applied to Freedom Motors. It's most importantly, it's the awareness. Where you store the information, how you store the information, how you sanitize it, who has access to it, the one thing that we have to, or two things basically, that we have to leave it at the door of Freedom Motors is number one, complacency. And number two is having this accessibility issues. Right? Oh, it would be nice if I can access patent information from home, right? No, those things are no-no. If you want to have that information, you better drive up there and do that. Having said that, there are some limitations to it when we have our patent lawyer, the patent law firm, out of New York in Wall Street. So how do you deal with that? Then you have to create very good data portals where, in the U.S. government, we talk about two things: management controls and technical controls. Technical controls itself will stifle innovation and will stifle your progress. So you need to have certain management controls and good awareness from the executives that, hey, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that, and the technical controls will also prevent certain things from happening. Like some issues that you have, but that unconsciously you do, but the system slaps on your hand and says, oh, you can't do that, So those are the things that we put in place. For example, we never communicate about any data in an email. The only email that we communicate with our lawyers up in New York is, hey, look at this information and send back that information to us through a memo. So we put a memo, we created a structure in our secure portal, and that memo, they read it and they reply to that memo in that directory so we can read it. And then when we have our conversations on Zoom or something, it's highly secure. We made sure that nobody's invited and all that. And things like that, we actually really follow to the core. And when it comes to where we store, only certain people, like 5 people in the entire organization, has access to that information. And we don't give out that information to anyone, including our customers. We have a good understanding with our customers that, hey, when we give you the prototype, we're actually giving you most of the information, but we also sign very strong legal contracts and bindings. So we have a good understanding with our customer. It actually reduces the speed of your progress, because now you have to build that relationship with your customer before you get in there. But we are fortunate that our investors understand that the timeline is a little slow compared to any other industry, because of the humongous amount of technology and IP that we have. So every company is different how you manage it, but in our case, we have to be extremely careful, because it's a game changer in my mind. This technology is really a game changer in this world.
Yeah, it's a good focus. Access control is one of the most significant access information security protection mechanisms. And I like the focus on managerial controls, plans, policies, procedures. Thou shalt do this or that. Controlling human behavior, because we know that that's the number one most significant risk to our information systems. And then the other being the technical controls. What is it that we put in place that will, enforce a security control that says, you're not supposed to be accessing that, or you can only access that between 9 and 5, Monday through Friday, not on the weekends, not remotely. And so, focusing on access control, you go back to the Ed Snowden story. We know what happened there, but we had a CISO summit at RSA in 2017, and we had 3 CISOs. We had the CISO from Macy's department store, the CISO from a friend of mine, Joe Voya from he was the CISO for City of San Francisco, and then we had Ed Snowden's boss. And so we talk about how complicated it all looked and what went down, and it really came back to access control, back to your point. And so he was hired as a sysadmin, but then he got promoted. So he didn't have access to the intelligence information, just had access to the systems to be able to manipulate the systems. Gets promoted to intelligence analyst. What do they forget to do? Remove his access as a sysadmin. So back to your point, it's really important to understand the technical controls that we put in to restrict that access as well. We're coming up on our time. We've got a couple of minutes left. Dr. Paluru, where do you see you guys in the next, say, 5 years?
Excellent question. So this is exactly what our investor also asked. I said 3 years from now, we'll be $1 billion company. 5 years from now, we'll be a $3 billion company. And I stand by it, because my strategies are put in place, and my board has the concurrence. They said it's a great strategy, and if we meet this target of production, then we will get to this valuation. That's the most important thing. And where do we want to be? For me, money and success is not the only thing. Our agenda is to do something good for this world, and good in the sense where people have not been able to do it, should be able to realize through our technology. Now, it's not that the petroleum products are bad. It's just that what we use today is a bad way of using it. How do you use it in a better way to reduce the carbon footprint? So that's our mission. And hopefully in 5 years, we will be there where we want to be. Hope is not a strategy, but always hope helps.
Well, yeah, good investing, good awareness, contributing back out to the public awareness, and then getting the other countries that are more aligned to the fossil fuel or that carbon footprint to have them adjust things as well. It's got to be a unified approach across the globe. But we're glad to see that Freedom Motors is contributing to that next future of generation of renewable energy, to be able to allow companies, organizations, governments to actually reduce a carbon footprint while continuing to contribute on the intellectual property fronts as well. I come back and to look at the Freedom Motors. I'll actually be taking a look a little bit more where you guys are at. I'll be reaching out as well. Those are the types of things that I like to promote within my personal networks as well. I do appreciate your contribution to the podcast today, Dr. Paluru. Thank you very much, and you have a great week.
You too, sir. Thank you very much. I totally appreciate it. And yes, you can always reach out to me. I can give you more insights in Freedom Motors and where we are headed.
That'd be great. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next edition, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you. You have a wonderful day.
You as well.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of New Cyber Frontier. Remember to get involved. Often we think that someone else will handle privacy and security in the virtual world, but you are the only one truly in command of your virtual fate. Join our mailing list so we can keep you informed of breaking news and new releases. If you have an idea, if you have a question that you would like to hear answered, or if you want to get involved with our efforts, reach out to us at newcyberfrontier.com. We also encourage you to visit our sponsors' links, as they are the ones that really make this show possible. I want to thank each of you for supporting the show, and we look forward to seeing you back for the next episode of New Cyber Frontier.